Now, the Democratic Alliance is calling for an investigation into Parliament Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. It follows a report that Parliamentary Secretary George's salary has increased by 70%. It's alleged that George received the increase just 7 months into the job. DA Chief Whip Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula joining us this morning. Nosiviwe, good to have you on ENC. That's quite a jump. I would like to know what that performance appraisal looked like.
Yeah, good morning, Gareth, and good morning to your viewers. Look, our view is that is not performance related. Our view and our suspicion is that, in fact, from the very beginning, the Speaker, the executive authority, so the Speaker and the NCOP chair, probably misled Parliament by insisting that the incumbent would be paid 2.6 million rand. Because if one looks at the documents that have now been made public, you will then see that, in fact, while Parliament had appointed Mr. George in June of 2022, in October of 2022, already the salary review that they proclaim started and in fact was then backdated. And so instead of being paid 2.6 million rand, the Secretary to Parliament is being paid 4.4 million rand. And if one looks at the statement that that Parliament released late last night, there's been no essentially any denial that that is in fact the case. What they're simply saying is that this is routine and that this is in line with market-related sort of practices. But the reality here, Gareth, is that we were at pains as political parties in Parliament to say we know that the Secretary of Parliament had been at Salga, where he had been paid in excess of 5 million rand. If he is coming to Parliament, it better then be within what Parliament is able to afford, which is 2.6 million rand. And the Speaker unequivocally committed to the House, to members of Parliament, and in effect, an extension to the public, that was the salary that was offered to the Secretary. And now we are realizing that, in fact, we were duped in Parliament by the Speaker, because the review was then done 3 months after his appointment and has been backdated to when he began work.
The problem is there's two issues here. One, of course, is the fact that this has even happened in the first place. And obviously that fight is still going to come out. He is now, if I am not speaking under correction, earning more than the president of the country. But a lot of people getting very angry, Nosiviwe, if I'm just looking at social media, which, as I always say, isn't the country, it's just social media in South Africa. Why is a member of Parliament, even if it is the Secretary, earning this kind of money? That is a CEO salary. How does an MP, how does a member of Parliament, how does a politician truly represent the interests of a country where unemployment is up to 60%? We have people living in poverty. It makes you so detached when you earn that kind of money. It's not a good representation. It's not a good look. The optics are off, isn't it?
No, of course. And I mean, the reality here is that, of course, as Parliament attempted to defend us last night, that this is market related and that it is, in accordance to the cost of living crisis. And the reality here, Gareth, is that Parliament can ill afford to pay the Secretary 4.4 million rand. And that is why the advert was priced at 2.6 million rand per annum. And the other issue here is that if you are pricing a vacancy at a particular rate, and then you then subsequent to that increase the salary, then that means that you've essentially excluded any other candidates. And this is where, for me, it starts to get a little bit hairy, because then does this mean that the Speaker and the chair of the NCOP had already targeted Mr. George as the preferred candidate, to the point where they were willing to mislead Parliament essentially, and say this is how much it would be paid, knowing very well that they would essentially almost double his salary? And as you are right, I mean, Parliament as it stands sits without a precinct. the parliament has burnt down, and the speaker and the NCOP chair are at pains to explain that parliament does not have money, but yet we are able to increase the secretary's salary by almost 70%. In just 3 months of him starting the job.
Let me ask a layman question, Nosiviwe, as well, because you make such a good point about the fact that Parliament is built down. There's no money for that to be done. At least the assessments are still being done, etc., etc. What sort of KPIs do you understand is in place for Lile George to be earning, and I've just worked this out, I hope my maths is right, 366,666 Rand a month? What sort of job must you be doing? Because that's CEO money. In fact, I don't think a lot of CEOs are earning that. That's your top tier blue label CEOs. But they're running multinational companies, highly profitable, employing tens of thousands of people. What qualifies the secretary to be earning this kind of money? What could he possibly do on a daily basis?
So essentially, the Secretary of Parliament runs the institution. They are responsible for both houses of Parliament. So while the Speaker is the political head of Parliament, they are the administrative head of Parliament. And of course, one may say, in other terms, or in what you would have in the private sector, that is what a CEO would do. But at the same time, Gareth, we've got to look at firstly the fiscal environment that we are in. Parliament only budgeted 2.6 million Rand for this vacancy. Yeah. And so, yes, one may say that this is a CEO position, and that, this is the administrative head of the institution, and they are doing things like making sure the institution is running properly, managing the staff of the staff of Parliament, excuse me, that are employed there, making sure that Parliament has meets all its outcomes. But the reality is that, let's not forget that when this position was advertised, it was at 2.6 million Rand. What has now changed within less than a year of the appointment being made? Unless the Secretary to Parliament was promised that, in fact, he would be matched the salary he was earning at Salga, and that we must be duped into saying, yes, we will accept a 2.6 million Rand candidate, and then 3 months later we will change it. Because if one looks at the documents which have now been made public, you can see that, in fact, the salary increase has been backdated to when the Secretary to Parliament has started. So the Speaker has a tremendous amount to answer for. And this is why this is less about the candidate itself and the incumbent. This is more about the Speaker, because she is the one who stood in the House and said, this is the candidate, this is how much he would be paid. So, it's not good enough for her to go under and simply, ask the administration to chuck out statements that make no sense. She needs to come forward and explain what she and the chairperson have done, and why it is that they felt that they could make these kind of decisions with public money.
Help me understand, as I say goodbye to you, Nosiviwe, help me understand, what does that investigation look? Because Parliament can get very complicated with their investigations and their house rules and their policies. When you say the Speaker to be investigated, who does that investigation? Who starts this process? Just very briefly, what's the next step here?
Yeah. So the Powers and Privilege and Immunities Committee would be the one that investigates, because we are of the view that she has breached the code of conduct, but more importantly, that the Speaker misled Parliament, which is a very, very serious offence. Of course, even when ordinary members, mislead Parliament, this is a serious offence, but it's even more so when the head of the institution does. And so we've written to the Deputy Speaker, because, of course, ordinarily the Speaker would be the one that refers the matter to the committee, but because now she's implicated, we've referred the matter to the Deputy Speaker.